This is accomplished by pulling down on the front part of the
C17 gets airborne, gets a certain speed, then you'll see it pitch way up to about 20 to 22 or more degrees, much more than any airliner you'll fly on. They're gaining altitude to get out of rifle range from a hostile area outside of their airport because, Rob, one lone bullet from an enemy rifle could ruin your entire day in a C-17.
Wouldn't want that to happen. This airplane is similar to the ones that are flown at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base these days, but this one came from the 437th Airlift Wing at Charleston Air Force Base in South Carolina, and our flight crew, ta-da! Now, it's a big airplane, but listen to this. I'm not going to name so many names. The pilots, Captain Kevin Hart, Captain Alex Ortiz, and a third pilot, Lieutenant Colonel Clark Belfonte, and the loadmaster, Tech Sergeant Matt Fulham. Now, at 585,000 pounds gross weight, that's 170,000 pounds of cargo, and they only have one loadmaster.
Because of automation, I mentioned to you, they got all the good features of the other aircraft, and then the things that were deficient in those aircraft. So through automation, one loadmaster can load and unload that by just standing still, moving his cargo or igloos with a button on the switch out of the airplane, transport it out, get the things off the airplane you wanted, get the things back on through that rear door, which is also a ramp. You could actually drive a Jeep up through it.
Or even an M1 Abrams main battle tank.
Even a big tank.
Top speed, well, typically about 500, a little over 500 miles an hour at altitude. Down low, maybe 350, but I think we're going to see a pretty decent looking pass coming up.
As the aircraft comes in from your left, it's going to show you its ability to go fast, yet be quiet, and then later go slow. As they turn the corner now, they're going to increase the throttles up on the 4 engines that are the same type of engines on a passenger airplane known as the Boeing 757. That's a feature that allows them to gain engines if they need an engine replacement anywhere in the world. So you'll see there is no smoke coming from the engines. It's going to be very quiet. So this is what they call the whisper pass. The aircraft was introduced back in 1995. According to McDonnell Douglas, there were a total of 279 that were manufactured at Long Beach. 223 of those went to us here in the USA. Other aircraft went to NATO, to Canada, to Qatar, to the United Arab Emirates, to India, to Kuwait, to Australia, and to the United Kingdom. Now we saw fast and quiet. Now we're going to see low and slow.
We are indeed. Now think of this airplane, even though it's not fully loaded at 585,000 pounds max gross weight, it is over 300,000 pounds. It has a wingspan of 169 feet 10 inches. It's 174 feet long and 55 feet from the bottom of the tires to the top of the tail. Big plane, very minimal crew, very advanced, and it has all of the things it needs to do a short field takeoff or landing. And demonstrating this and its approach now, we're going to see it lower the flaps, the trailing edge flaps on the wings, which actually, because of their positioning, tell the positioning of it behind the exhaust of the engines, it's very unique.
It creates its own lift through the engine. The engines are canted up, so when they get into reverse, they won't ingest a lot of debris on an unimproved airport. Now, 3,500 feet in a very narrow runway is the ability of this airplane. You don't need a parallel taxiway, you don't need a wide runway, and because of its ability on takeoff and landing on those short airports that have been carved maybe out of a jungle, out of a mountainside, they have increased the landing sites around the globe to about 7,000 more places that they can land this airplane.
Then the C5.
Going to maintain a high profile.
And the leading edge slats will also come down. It drastically changes the shape of the wing, doing two things. More drag, yes, but a lot more lift. So let's watch it as it comes through, and it's going to be fairly quiet until they clean it up. This is aerodynamically dirty, as they say. The landing gear is extended, leading edge slats, trailing edge flaps are there, and you can look at those flaps and see how they're arranged. It's really a very unique aircraft, having flown for the first time in September of 1991.
Didn't mean to interrupt. There you can see the Venetian line trailing edge. You can see light coming through that depending on where you're standing. To change the components on the inside of the aircraft, they have all been positioned approximately at neck height. Quick disconnect fasteners will get you to a panel that has a malfunctioning system in it. You pull that system out without having to have any special tools, put the spare in or a new one in, button it up, and you're on your way. So it's maintenance compatible.
As they turn around, I want you to watch the bank here that'll happen here in just a couple of seconds. Early in its existence, there were some who kind of joked about it. Is it a fighter or a freighter? For two reasons. One is that rather than having a big yoke, look at that, that's in excess of 45 degrees worth of bank right there. And rather than having a control wheel or a control yoke, as they call it, it's got a stick like a fighter. It also has this wonderful piece of glass called a heads-up display.
The heads-up display precludes the crew on a very low visibility approach from having to look out the window in anticipation of the runway and then look down under the instrument panel at their gauges to see that they're on course and on center line. It actually puts the runway environment straight out above the instrument panel through the windshield in the eyes of the pilot. So there's no darting from above, below, which they had to do for many years. Heads-up display, or as it's abbreviated, HUD.
There are 4 computer systems, plus a redundant manual system to control the airplane. It is very advanced for its time, and it allows the pilots to have an added safety measure ×3, actually. Primary flight control system computer, 3 computer backups, and a manual system if they get in trouble and get shot up badly. But watch them as they quickly, that's right into 45 degrees worth of bank, just wham, just shove that stick over, and the aircraft responds like an aircraft a fourth the size of it. What are those things on the wings, by the way?
Oh, those are, they're like mud flaps.
You know, you and I have been through this a lot of times. You've never said mud flaps before.
Yeah, but you're retiring, so I had to get a laugh. Oh, those.
Tell me, okay, ladies and gentlemen, before I let Clisham talk more, on the edges of the wings, there are things that you may have seen on an airliner. They are called winglets. They stick up into the air a little bit. On this airplane, they're about 9 feet high, almost like regulation for basketball. What are they about?
Well, that's an invention of the great late Joe Clark. They are called winglets, and they are very effective. They have been retrofitted on corporate aircraft. They have been fitted on airliners, like Rob said, and on modern military aircraft. Those winglets control inefficient air or turbulent air coming off the wings of conventional aircraft wings. They direct it to an efficient method of reducing the drag, which also reduces fuel consumption and increases cruise speed. Since the major introduction of winglets due to modern technology, billions and billions and billions of gallons of aviation fuel have been saved. And we credit that to the late Joe Clark. He's up in winglet heaven right now, but he was a wonderful guy. You probably met him at Living Legends when you were out there.
Indeed.
Co-hosting that. We had a ball with him. He was a great guy. So that is an invention that came about through composite materials.
Let's watch now as they approach. We're going to see our air crew slow the aircraft down and demonstrate how quickly it can land. Now, if you've been on an airliner and have experienced a landing, you will sometimes remember that most of these airliners have what they call thrust reversers, and it turns the jet exhaust around and faces it forward to slow you down. It's noisy and you feel yourself being pushed forward in the seat. Anything that's on the armrest, if there's something there, it goes sailing forward. Don't try to get your phone. We'll get it later. But watch them as they approach at about 140 miles an hour. What you will see on this airplane is that the nacelles, the compartments which hold these F-117 engines, there will be panels that will open up, and you'll see that as they turn on the thrust reversers, taking some of that turbofan air and pushing it forward like turning a fan around to slow you down.
What if you don't have a wide enough runway to turn around?
Well,
what if you don't have a parallel taxiway?
I think we're going to see a little bit of a demonstration of that as well. Watch carefully. As soon as the aircraft touches down, panels on the nacelles will open up and they will turn the thrust reversers on. From the 437th Airlift Wing at Charleston Air Force Base, South Carolina, touching down, watch for the panels. There they are, and this is about as much noise as this airplane is ever going to make.
If you don't have a wide runway, you just back it up with a thrust reverser.
Who's the
third
backup
crew
cam?
member is the eyes. The pilot has a tiller. He keeps the nose wheel right on the center line as best as possible. That's how he keeps or she keeps the airplane from going off to the side. Go back, unload your cargo or troops, reload without shutting down, and you're on your way out of hostile territory. Now, Rob, what I wanted to mention today is, according to the facts on this airplane, the C17, it has the capacity to carry 134 troops, seats for 134 troops. At the evacuation a couple of summers ago of Afghanistan, it was documented that 823 people got into that fuselage. They counted every one of them.
Oh my.
They were evacuating our people out of Afghanistan. You think they were sitting down? No, they were elbowed ever. They were crammed in there. They were standing up. There was no movie, there was no food, there were no cocktails, but did they care? No, because they were alive and they were getting out. Think of that, 823 people inside of that airplane getting out with their lives out of Afghanistan. Give that airplane and the crews that got them out a big round of applause, Dayton, if you will. Wow.
1,500 feet landing distance, only 3,500 feet to get it in the air. 7,000 more airports than the C5 Galaxy. And today, it's all brought to us by
Rumpke, who's been on board for so many years. They are the people that are presenting that airplane all weekend long. Rumpke helps keep our environment clean. They are all through the spectator area with their containers. Rumpke has supported this show for many years. We love them. Thank you, Rumpke. More about the airplane of Rumpke on page 22 of your program.
Program's just $10. And what a memento of the 50th anniversary of the Centerpoint Energy Dayton Air Show presented by Kroger. It's, you know, Danny, this is home territory for you and me. We've done this show together pretty much unstopped since 2003. And I started volunteering here in 1979, And the folks who invited me are here in one of the chalets, and I want to do a shout out to a guy and his wife who literally changed my life, because I never, in my wildest thoughts, that I would ever have a job in aviation, announcing air shows around the country and working with people like you and everybody else around, and Mike and the gang. Jim Hagedorn, Sue Hagedorn, now living in Tucson, formerly from Dayton, Ohio. Jim and Sue, I love you guys. I'm glad we had dinner Thursday night. We'll have dinner again on Monday night. Thank you for helping me change my life and reinventing myself.
And Jim and Sue, on behalf of all of us air show announcers that have worked with Rob over the years, all the air bosses, all the performers, we thank you for bringing this man of excellence and awards into our industry and taking it right to the top. Rob Ryder, your 25th year, congratulations to you.
Thank you, sir. I'll be retiring at the end of this season and moving on to narrating audiobooks, which is doing exceptionally well. I got 24 books in the last few years and more in line. I've got enough books to keep me busy to almost the end of the year. So that said, by the way, yes. KB was up here earlier setting up with the Blue Angels. They've got some swag, and 192 days, I think, left till Christmas. 186 days left till Christmas. And the Blue Angels have some swag, because swag is important. And if you've got an aviation enthusiast in your family, this is a great place to stock up on swag.
The Christmas gifts you want are here. Birthday, graduation, anniversary, or some not so early Christmas shopping. Buy it here. We don't pay mall rents. The price is right, the quality is high, and various charitable groups are selling those items. They share a part of the profit that go back into the local and bona fide charities that they represent.
The airplane that just took off is one of somewhere in the neighborhood of 15,600 or so that were built. But, you know, sometimes these numbers are different in different sources. And Danny and I, he's laughing already because we know what we're going to say. If our numbers of production numbers of aircraft are different from your numbers, then you're right.
We get our facts from publications by the manufacturers or by the DOD. And a lot of people disagree with us, but that's why everybody's right. Yeah, we love your numbers. We'll use your numbers someday.
Fact of the matter is, the airplane that just took off is one of the most important airplanes in all of World War II, and makes everybody's top 10 list for the top fighters of all time.
And it is a Top Gun airplane of World War II, at least one of them, operated in all theaters of World War II, the North American P51 Mustang. And RT, coming from the Carolinas, thought it was appropriate to keep that name on the aircraft. Get a load of this. The sun gleaming off the wingtips, the rate of roll, and the great sound of the Packard engine.
Over 400 miles an hour, and this was representative of the little friends. Those airplanes that escorted the bombers, the big friends, to their targets and back. And there is a very, very well-known unit of American airmen who broke the color barrier here in the United States. They were the Tuskegee Airmen.
Tuskegee Airmen from the Tuskegee Institute in Tuskegee, Alabama, African-American pilots. I hate to say nobody wanted.
They were initially shunned by the bomber crews.
Look at this, a 4-point precision hesitation roll. R.T. Dixon, flying since he was 3. And, oh yes, he was supervised. Then soloing at the legal age of 16. Started flying air shows back in 1992. The airframe delivered to the 445th Fighter Squadron in Bakersfield, California, back in May of 1945. Served in active and guard units. The last duty station was just south of here, Stanford Airport in Louisville, Kentucky. Went surplus in '57, came out of restoration in 2012, and painted in honor of Will Hord's last mount as he fought in World War II in England in his little na-na-na-na-na to the British,
That's
the
right.
Swamp Fox. Off the deck, up goes the nose. Into the double victory roll.
You want to explain how that worked, Danny?
After
Because
a pilot came back from air-to-air combat, if he had downed an enemy aircraft, he'd come in low over the home field, buzz it low at a high speed of altitude, and do a victory roll. That meant I got one of the enemy out of the sky today.
pretty impressive stuff. Back, if I may, to the Tuskegee Airmen, because there were black men who wanted to fly and fight for our country, and the War Department didn't think black men were smart enough to do it. But political pressure was brought to bear, and they set up in Tuskegee, Alabama, the Tuskegee Institute, and black men proved they could fly, and they did. And initially, though they were shunned by the bomber crews, they soon realized that the Tuskegee Airmen stayed with the bombers. They didn't go off chasing aerial victories. They stayed to protect those bombers, and they ended up being the most requested guys out there. And there is an airplane out here on the air show circuit that has that name, by request.
There's also a traveling mobile theater that tells the story of not only the Tuskegee Airmen, but also the WASPs as well. The women who flew the aircraft to get them into combat and into training in North America and around the world. All right, let's watch and listen. R.T. Dixon is the artist in the sky doing what is done best with the P51. And by the way, it is such a popular airplane, it even knows how to whistle. Listen to this. We got enough speed, you'll hear it. Of the over 15,000 of the aircraft that were said to have been manufactured, there are about 150 that still exist worldwide. However, at any given day, probably only 70 or 80 of those aircraft could actually get off the ground and fly. On takeoff, RT was burning 120 gallons of very expensive aviation fuel an hour. Now, in this demonstration, he's only burning about 60 gallons an hour, times $7 plus, do the multiplication.
420 bucks every, never mind, I don't want to know that.
You don't want to know. R.T. Dixon, our pilot and owner of the aircraft, would like to thank Concord Aircraft Batteries of West Covina, California, and now with a location outside of Atlanta, Georgia, for their support. And I concur with that. They are one of my great sponsors as well. And also Lift Aviation. R.T. Dixon, in an effort to honor all of those who have served, past, present, and future, R.T. travels across the U.S. to educate and demonstrate the capabilities of the P51 to future generations.
This is accomplished by pulling down on the front.